So I think about death all the time because it's probably the central theme. It's probably the thing that I think the most about, and I think that influences how I see time, and also how I think how it influences agency, like what actions I'm willing to take despite the judgment of others. And so a lot of times, and it might be because I have more insecurity than everyone, that I think like, man, I want to do this thing, and then I hear all these other voices of reasons why I shouldn't do it, or why somebody else will say, like, that's bad, or you're bad, or like that's wrong, whatever. And so I think I've had to come up with a lot of these devices to get around my own insecurities, to take action despite those insecurities. And the biggest one that I think about is that it doesn't matter whether I achieve all of my goals or I don't achieve all of the goals. In 3 generations, I'll be forgotten, and the only people who were naysaying against me will also be dead. And so then it's like, just do it for me. And then when I wake up every day, there's only one voice I have to listen to. I think that the more you flex whatever that muscle is of like independent thinking, the more it becomes the default way that you think. And then everyone else's actions just start looking more and more insane to you.
What's an example of that you can think of?
I mean, shoot, just the most basic ones of like living the life that you don't want, not wearing what you want to wear, not dating who you want to date, not living where you want to live. Like you're living at home and you want to move and your parents say no and you don't make the move, or you're dating a girl because she's socially accepted, by your friend group, she's safe, but like there's always some distance in between you, but you're like, I don't want to risk it, right? Or like you're in the job and every day you go there and you're like, I mean, it's okay. And the idea of just living an okay life just sounds so terrifying to me, that the freedom to fail over and over again is still more fulfilling to me. At least it feels like it's real than walking through kind of on autopilot. And so I think that's a lot of the choices that other people make that seem insane to me now, but didn't seem insane to me a decade ago. You know what I mean? I think it's just like, as you practice taking more agency, taking more responsibility for the decisions, then you just get better and better at it. And then it just seems more and more ridiculous. They're like, I just can't quit my job. And you're like, why? Like, no, physically, why? Like, why can't you quit your job? Like, you know what I mean? They start hyperventilating. And it's like, could you move in with your parents? Could you move in with a friend? Could you split rent? I mean, I could, but I mean, other people who are going to die in 100 years would think what? And one of my favorite ones is, and I say this all the time to Layla, like whenever we're getting to some sort of like mini complaint, it's like, if you zoom out far enough, you can't see the earth. So we're talking about like, oh man, they're going to mess up this order on this vendor's, blah, blah, blah. I was like, if you zoom out far enough, you can't see the earth. It's just like, it just puts everything immediately into perspective of how ridiculous some of the things that we're concerned about are. I think I had a lot of practice with it because so like a lot of people have many voices that they hear that they feel are judging them, right? They have their friends, they have their uncle, they have their siblings, they have their cousins, coworkers, whatever. I think I had just one voice that I heard really loudly. And I was talking to one of our employees the other day, and I was trying to put it in perspective, younger guy. And I was like, I imagine how much you care about your mother's opinion and your father's opinion and and all of those other people. I was like, and now imagine that there's literally only one, because I had no siblings. I basically had no mother. I had just a father. And so like his approval was literally everything. And he disapproved of the path that I wanted to take in my life. And so I think a lot of these mental faculties or these little frameworks or these isms just came from like, how can I combat this incredibly booming voice in the background? Because like when I look at what I was doing at the time, like I was a consultant, I graduated in 3 years, I took the consulting job, I did all the things. But the craziest thing was that the moment that my father was most proud of me and he approved of my life the most was when I was the saddest. And so that's when I was like, maybe his approval isn't the right way to feel good about life. And so that started basically the 6-month journey from when I decided that I wanted to change my life till when I changed it. And I think that like as you become more able or more potent or higher agency, that timeline between when you decide you want to do something and when you actually do it just continues to compress, right? Like now if I want to change something, I'm like, let's change it, like done. We walk out of a thing, I was like, we're never going to do that podcast again, or I don't want to talk to this person again, or whatever it is, right? Whereas before it's like, okay, I have to sleep on it. I have to really think about it. And like, how am I going to, it's like, why do I care about how I'm going to say it? This is what it is, done. And it's just like, and that timeline is compressed. But the hardest one for me, like the first one was by far the hardest. And everyone since then, the nice thing is that no matter how difficult your circumstance is, if you have, like, the bigger the wall that you have to get through is, as soon as you get past that one big wall, you then can use that wall as the evidence for why you can jump over the next wall, because that will be the biggest one. And so like after I did quit my job and left my house and left Baltimore and didn't tell my dad until I was across the country because I was so afraid, like people think of me as like some big alpha, whatever. Dude. I was like, I was so afraid of my father's disapproval that I didn't tell him until I physically left the state. Like I'm not like, think about that. Like I wasn't even just one state over. I was like 5 states over. And then I was like, hey, by the way, I'm going to California. And he was like, well, let's come over. We'll talk about it. And I was like, I'm in Ohio.
Already here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Already
and then
gone.
then obviously he had a different reaction. Right. But then after that, it was like, what do I have to do now? It's like, oh, I gotta sell strangers. And I was like, I told my dad I didn't want to do what he wanted. How hard could this be? And so like it then becomes this one huge proof point. So the bigger the dragon is that you have to slay, the more evidence you have that you can slay the next dragon. And I think that is, if there's ever been a good point for why getting over the first hard one is so hard, is that it will then give you the reinforcement that you can do whatever you need to do next.